Hello and welcome to the Public Affairs and Public Access telecast. My name is Fran Watson.
And I'm Darrell Douglas.
And today we're continuing our talk on the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, also known as the HERO. The HERO is a local ordinance that was passed in May by City Council, and it is an ordinance that prohibits discrimination with respect to city services, city contracting with the city, with respect to the private sector. It is private employment, public accommodations, and housing in Houston.
Although the city declared that the opponents did not have enough signatures or reach the minimum threshold, the fight for HERO continues. Now the courtroom is the arena. Opponents of the ordinance filed a lawsuit seeking validation of the collected signatures, which arguably would have been more than enough to put it on the ballot this November. After proceeding in a Harris County court this past Friday, a trial was scheduled for January 2015, which means the HERO cannot be placed on the ballot for the upcoming 2014 election. While the city waits for a verdict, HERO is not in effect.
Yeah, because what Darrell is speaking about is the fact that during the month of June, there were some opponents that started a petition drive. And during that petition drive, their goal was to get HERO placed on the ballot. They were supposed to collect a little over 17,000 signatures. However, while they did deliver 50,000 signatures to the city secretary on July 3rd, there were only 15,000 signatures, a little over 15,000 signatures that were declared valid. And because of that, they didn't meet the threshold, which, according to the city charter, is 10% of the people that voted in the last mayoral election.
Exactly. During the debate, various issues, talking points, and buzzwords used by HERO opponents led us to invite our panel of Black GLBT and ally HERO supporters on the show to discuss whether there is a divide or disconnect between the Black GLBT community and the mainstream Black community. If there is a divide, what steps or actions can be taken to unify or develop a cohesive community? Does HERO play a role in that development, and if so, how? And if you want to chime in, feel free to tweet us using the hashtag #BlackHeroes.
Yes, and the HERO covers 15 classes, including race, gender, marital status, familial status, veteran status, and pregnancy. But the center of the debate focused on two components, which is gender identity and sexual orientation. And that will be our focus today. And we also are asking people, we want you to be a part of the conversation. Make sure you call in. You can call in at 713-807-1794. Our panelists are here to talk to you as well as to talk about these issues. And so with that said, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists.
Okay, we have Michael C. Webb Jr. of Delta Phi Upsilon Fraternity Incorporated, Iota Chapter. We have Brandon Mack, community activist.
Yes, and we have Tarah Taylor, who's also a community organizer. And we have Monica Roberts, who is a community advocate and a blogger. And she's also the chair of Trans Women Incorporated, the Houston chapter.
So I guess the first question that we will throw out there, Michael, what is the importance of the HERO ordinance to the Black community and the Black GLBT community?
I think we want to go ahead and throw that one to Brandon.
Okay, so the importance of the HERO or the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance is that it is a local way to address discrimination that happens in our city. It protects 15 different classes that not only include the sexual orientation and gender identity communities, but also race, color, veteran status, marital status. And so for the African American community, we are protected underneath HERO. So if there are issues in terms of public, in terms of the city, in terms of public accommodations, if there's issues in employment, and we do know that employment is definitely a very serious issue among the African American community, we now have a local measure to be able to address those concerns and those issues that happen with respect to discrimination. If you don't have that local measure, the only other options you have are federal measures, and those particular measures are very, very expensive, and especially for the African American community, we don't have the resources to be able to seek out those federal measures. So having a local way of being able to address any type of issue related to discrimination in public accommodations, in public spaces, as well as in employment, we now have a measure to be able to address those and get our concerns brought to the table and get redress for those particular issues.
Nice. Well, I was wondering with that, and please feel free to anyone to answer this. Do you believe that HERO would be an effective measure in the Black community? And if you think so, say why, and if not, why not?
I think it would. For starters, but until HERO was passed, we did not have as Brandon said, a local way to deal with discrimination issues that happen to all sectors of the African American community. And we don't, contrary to some of the spin our opponents put out there, we don't have those protections at the state level. And as Brendan also mentioned, the federal route, going the federal route is an expensive and very time-consuming one.
And Tarah, this question goes to you. For those that would say it's 2014, there's no need for a non-discrimination ordinance because Voting Rights Act of 1964, that we're a post-racial society. What do you think about that?
I think that's hogwash. Racism today is more covert in some ways and more overt in other ways. And having a mechanism on the local level, on the city level, is extremely important. I feel like not having that mechanism in place has caused us to just take the racism and not report it because there is nowhere to report it to. So for someone to say that, they're basing that off of no evidence because we have not had a way to report racism on a city level. So there is no data on that. So you can't accurately even make statements like that.
And kind of to that point, that's another reason for why HERO is necessary, is that it can provide that data of what is going on, how are we being discriminated against. And also think about it, if you have a measure that is preventing discrimination and another additional toolkit to your arsenal of what you can do to address these issues, it makes for a better city. So for example, one of the ways that this started was because people were being discriminated against entering certain restaurants because you could clearly tell it was on the basis of race. With this ordinance in place, or when it finally will be put fully in place, you now have a mechanism of going to the Office of the Inspector General. They will then have to bring that complaint up to that particular business, and that's a way for you and that business to talk over that. And that way that business can redo their policies. If they continue to do this, they can be punished in terms of fines. It will impact the business. It will give other people the option of knowing that this particular business does discriminate. And therefore we know as a community that does not discriminate, not to support that particular business.
Well, so just to shift slightly on that, knowing that this ordinance can be good for the Black community, why do you believe that during the repeal effort, why were there many people from the African American community that were signing petitions in order to get the HERO repealed?
Well, I think it was obvious that there are certain members in the Houston community that took advantage of the Black community, or some leaders in the Black community. They took advantage of the homophobia and the transphobia within the Black community, and really sort of tried to push. They encouraged them to pretty much raise a ruckus against HERO. And that was very unfortunate. It was a very painful experience for a lot of us, especially a lot of us same-gender people of color, seeing our own sort of quote-unquote people fighting against our rights. Even though, realistically speaking, as we've been saying this whole time, HERO protects everyone, even while we were testifying before city council, seeing that majority of the people of color who were testifying at Hero were against the ordinance, that was a painful experience for a lot of us. And I think that should be addressed, and I think we should be talking about that. And I would actually challenge the opposition, instead of using misinformation to mobilize the community, how about you inform the community on what they can do to address the racism they experience in their daily lives?
And I guess in that same vein, you talked about using truth instead of talking points of fear mongering. I guess going around the table, has anyone themselves been discriminated against in your lifetime thus far here in Houston?
Oh Lord. I want to definitely talk about some of the issues that have impacted the Houston trans community, in terms of we're looking at 26% unemployment. We've had instances in where trans people have tried to get jobs and were denied opportunities to get employment because of anti-trans discrimination or outright hatred or outright lies that are told, that have been told about the about the trans community, which I won't go into and waste the valuable time here. We're also looking at the fact that there's just far too much misinformation that is going on and talked about in the on the trans sector. Even sometimes in our own LGBT ranks, there's misinformation and stuff about the trans community.
In terms of experiencing discrimination, I have definitely had moments where I've experienced discrimination in the city of Houston on the basis of both my race as well as my sexual orientation. When it comes to my race, being denied entry into restaurants, clubs, all sorts of different spaces just because I am black, and they will use, coded language, but you can clearly tell in looking at the composition and also standing back and looking and seeing who gets in and who doesn't, you can clearly tell there is a discrimination component that is going on. In the employment avenue, if you put particular things on your resume, they get discounted because of the fact that they'll be associated with race, or they'll be associated with your sexual orientation, and you may get discounted on the basis of that. So those are elements of discrimination that I personally have experienced and know from the other members of my community and other friends that they've also experienced that as well.
Anyone else? No?
Well, I'll go. I think, first of all, my parents taught me to maneuver around racism and do my best to dispel some of the stereotypes associated with Black females. The one advantage I do have is I'm a Black woman and not a Black man, so I don't experience some of the same things that others have or Black men have. I'm a little less threatening, I would say. So I personally have not experienced overt racism in Houston. I've only lived here for 8 years, so maybe it hasn't happened yet, but I know it exists because I've witnessed it happen to other people. And I've worked in industries where it's done covertly as well. So it's happening. It may not have happened to me, and I may not be aware of it, but it's happening here.
And with that said, we're going to take our first caller. Caller, what's your question or your comment?
My comment is I just chimed in on what you all were discussing. I just turned about 15 minutes to the panel discussion, and I heard the young man say that it hurt him for his community or his Black community to turn their back on what they were trying to do with this ordinance. But let me take it from a different standpoint. First of all, it's not I'm not calling to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm not calling to dampen anyone's efforts, but I want to say from a Christian perspective that we have come up with a sense of right and wrong from what we've been taught, and all of us are products of our surroundings and environment and what we've been taught. And from the biblical perspective, which a lot of blacks believe in, that's where we get some of our belief system from the way a man and a woman was created and their purpose, their function, and what their design is in this place. And I understand, and I can't fully understand because I'm not where you are. I'm heterosexual. I am wife, mother, and some of what you're going through I can sympathize with, but some of it I just don't understand because not to hurt anyone's feelings, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how our body makeup is and how our parts were designed to fit together, and that divine being that we all serve is intelligent and did not make a mistake in that area. And so from that perspective, that's what gives some of people in Christendom difficulty with, transgender and homosexuality. Now, I have boys. I have grandsons. So I am trying to be open-minded. I work with people who are different than myself, and I try to be open-minded. And who am I to judge? Who am I to judge anyone? But a lot of what we express on a daily basis or what we believe, that's what we've been taught for 40 years, 50 years. And we have to admit that we just got to the point where homosexuality is open, and we're seeing marriage between the same partners, and that's against what most of the establishment has been taught. So that was my comment, and I really, and I would love to hear your response, and it's not to hurt anyone's feelings. It's not to push anybody. This is from the perspective I'm coming from. But I would like to say this. The reason why the mayor is having a hard time with that, because she's homosexual, it comes across as she's pushing her personal agenda. We have to wonder that if she wasn't homosexual, would she be pushing as hard for this ordinance if she was heterosexual? And that's what the belief is, that most people don't think she would be pushing for it that hard, but because it directly affects her. And I applaud her for standing up and doing that, because it has to be hard in the face of opposition.
Okay, and
Thank you for allowing me to voice my comment.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I heard you say that you are a grandmother. Congratulations. And so I have a two-part question. Number one, I heard you say a little bit about not understanding people who are members of the LGBT community, and therefore that's where the disconnect was with some people in the black community. Does that then mean to you that it's okay for someone to be discriminated against, meaning they could lose their job or they could be kicked out of a place because they are clocked, I think is the term for it, as a member of the LGBT community? And number two, if that person were your grandchild, how would you feel?
Okay, to answer what you said in the beginning, no, it's never, the first question, no, it's never okay to be discriminated against, because I've gone through that, and I'm not in the position you are, but I've been discriminated against in other ways, and so that does not feel good. And I wish that one day we can be judged not by the color of our skin. That's a whole different conversation there. But secondly, I have sons and grandsons, and I can only teach them what my belief is, and that's what I've taught them. But if my grandson or my son comes to me and tell me that they're homosexual, that's my son. I'm gonna love him regardless.
I appreciate you calling in. So thank you very much, and we're going to go ahead and respond to what was said. Thank you again for
Okay,
calling in.
thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, just to respond very quickly, I can identify with what she said. I grew up in a very similar family that you probably grew up, that you're saying you grew up in. My mother and you probably could have a great conversation. You probably would agree on a lot of things. That being said, I think you pretty much expressed why it's very important for people like ourselves who are people of color and who are gay and are bisexual to be more open and to speak out about these things. 'Cause it requires a one-on-one conversation. You said that you don't want us to be discriminated against, but we are discriminated against pretty much every day within our own community. And so how can you help us protect us within the Black community? And I think those type of conversations we need to have, but it's only if, one, you came very open-minded and you came very respectfully, and we need to have that type of dynamic between each other. And that's something that we need to encourage. And I applaud you for having the guts to really come into a panel where everyone's pretty much have the same sort of philosophy about this issue. So thank you for offering your insight.
And to kind of also go along with that, what I would also very much like to stress is the fact that this is a measure that protects 15 different classes. And the GLBT community and the transgender community is one part of that, but it also protects the African American community. And we must remind ourselves that if we have experienced discrimination, why would we then want to block a measure that would help prevent discrimination against other groups that have felt those same particular discriminations? One thing that I think has created the divide within our community is that lack of understanding, in the fact that it may not be what you participate in, but you shouldn't necessarily discriminate against that because out of fear or out of not understanding it. I mean, the Bible also teaches for us to love thy neighbor. So therefore, we should love thy neighbor as we love ourselves. And in doing that, we would not discriminate against each other. We would in turn embrace each other and at least allow each other to live in our spaces, be who we are fully in each other's spaces, which this ordinance allows people to do. It allows people to have a job, which we all want and we all need for prosperity. It allows us to be able to be in spaces with each other, and even in being in those spaces with each other, we start to learn from each other. We start to see each other naturally instead of fearing and using fear tactics to guide our knowledge of each other.
And make no mistake, a lot of the opposition has been driven by poll-tested fear and smear tactics. Our opponents have been using this playbook ever since the hero debate started to try to drive a wedge between the LGBT community and the African American community. And one of the things that I hope you noticed on this one is that, hello, there are Black LGBT people. That we are, and the first thing that anybody notices about us before we even begin to deal with the issues inherent in the LGBT end of it, SGL end of it, is our Blackness. We get discriminated against first because of our Blackness. And let's make no mistake about that. Okay, we have historical connections to this community. Remember, the civil rights, the March on Washington in 1963 was organized by Bayard Rustin, a gay Black man. Lesbian woman by the name of Lorraine Hansberry. And James Baldwin helped to raise money for many of the civil rights movement marches in the 60s. There are many people who happen to be SGL and trans, and probably trans, that were taking part in many of those sit-ins. So yeah, there have been some very specious and unchristian arguments that have been used in this debate, which have been sickening on a lot of levels and disappointing to me as a proud African American who happens to be trans.
Tarah, as an ally of the community, do you see that there is some type of divide between the Black community and then the Black LGBT community?
I do. It bothers me a lot. I have spoken out a lot about it because we are all interconnected. Our skin is all the same color, but and this is just a common issue in our community that we fight amongst ourselves. We label each other, we separate ourselves. It's something that is ingrained from Willie Lynch back in slavery. And one thing, King understood the interconnectedness of struggle and oppression. And we still have not learned that ourselves. And these struggles that we have within our community are tearing us apart, like literally. There's too many of us having the same types of problems for us not to be together. So yes, I have seen it in many ways, whether it be our hair, our skin color, who we choose to go to sleep with every night, who has kids and who doesn't. We have many divides, and this is just one, and I think one of the bigger ones.
And as I like to say, black LGBT issues are black community issues and vice versa. Mm-hmm. If you're passing a law that suppresses our voting right to vote, you don't think it doesn't impact those of us in the LGBT community as black, as members of the black African American community? Yes, I say we have issues in the trans community of getting accurate ID. Okay, so that will affect us in our attempts to try to go vote. I say we have other issues. We have unemployment issues and stuff that impact this community. Or if we folks as SGL and trans folks aren't able to be employed and use our talents, because many of us have college educations and advanced degrees. If we're not able to use those to benefit the entire African American community, okay, the African American community as a whole loses. We lose as a community, as a Houston community, because those folks will go somewhere else where they do have these laws on the books and they do protect SGL and trans folks, and they will welcome them with open arms and into their economies. So, when we have, institutions like Rice and U of H and TSU, where people are getting educated, and HISD, which has had a similar type of policy on the books since 2011 with no documented instances of what our opponents, falsely said would happen. It's mind-boggling to me why you would oppose or actually fall for the okie doke.
Mm-hmm. And if I may, I wanted to extend on both what Tarah and Monica just said. The thing is that we do have these separations oftentimes because of the fact that people who lie in those intersections are forced to choose. Mm-hmm. So if you are a black and GLBT person, oftentimes you're made to kind of choose which side are you going to be on. So for example, if you're in the church and you're told that being a GLBT person is against the church, and you're told basically you have two options, either deny that aspect of who you are or leave, you're basically saying that GLBT person is not a member of the community. Mm-hmm. So therefore they are not welcome and therefore feel divided. But they themselves don't feel divided. I think for the most part, black GLBT people are going to feel a connection to both their blackness as well as to their sexual orientation, their gender identity, and all aspects of themselves, and they want to bring all of that to the community. But when the community says you must now choose which aspect of who you are that you're going to be, mm-hmm. why would you not want to bring all of yourself and be fully all of who you are with everybody in your life?
And I have a question. I'll throw this out to everyone that's on the panel. What do you have to say to those that say what you do behind closed doors is your business, but don't force your sexuality on me? What's your response to that?
Don't force your heterosexuality on me. I mean, if you're allowed to publicly get married, if you're allowed to hold hands with your wife or husband, why can't I do the same with my husband? If you're allowed to have organizations that support your causes, why can I have organizations that support my causes? It's all based off of, quote unquote, what we call equality.
And also, I don't like the fact that we whittle down sexuality to what's done in closed doors, that is behind doors. That's not what it is. It is who you love. It is how you interact, how you have an understanding of this world. So if I am a gay man, which I am very much a very proud gay man, I bring all of that to my experiences. I bring that all to where I work, where I'm at, and I should be able to be fully who I am in any space. That doesn't mean, if I decide that at one given moment I want to kiss my partner, I should have the freedom and comfortability to be able to do that. If I want to be able to put a photo of my family, and that family can include a husband, my children, and I want to be able to put that photo up, I should have the ability to be able to do that. And it is not flaunting, it's living life. Just like when we see everyone else live their lives when they're in the movies holding hands and doing their things, they're not quote unquote flaunting, they're just living their life. And it's the same thing for everybody. We all want to be able to live our lives openly and fully who we are.
And we have a caller.
Caller, what's your question or your comment?
Hello, my name is Antonio Maldonado, and I'd like to thank all of y'all for speaking about the hero. And I would like you could go into a little bit more detail. I'm gay, and I still don't understand it, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. I mean, that's the only way you're going to know. And my question is about the restroom. Was that bin? Was it taken out?
The contentious section of the hero. That part was taken out at the request of the trans community, because it would have caused a problematic situation in locking in situations where people persons would be forced to do gender policing. And you have situations where you have our butch lesbian friends who may present almost like male, and then you have some of our femme masculine appearing folks that may have ended up in situations where they would have been problematically called out. There was an incident that happened back in 2010 at the Houston Public Library with a trans woman by the name of Tarah Moore. She was minding her own business and she went in to use the women's restroom, and some transphobic security guard called a Houston police officer into the situation by claiming a quote-unquote man had gone into the women's restroom. And she subsequently found herself being arrested for that. All right. Now, to address some of the fiction on that, it was illegal for people to go into the restrooms to cause a disturbance before Hero passed. It is illegal now, and it always will be. I said the hero and the passage of the hero on May 28th did not change that one bit.
And another thing is that it's not saying that there has to be the creation of new bathrooms. Mm-hmm. Bathrooms are still going to be able to exist. And it's also important to note that this particular type of legislation is already in over 200 cities in 17 different states. And there hasn't been an increase in public safety complaints or issues of violence or things of that nature. So that was also very, very disheartening to see on the petitions that that's what they were using it as once again, a fear tactic against the transgender community that, it's allowing men to go into women's restrooms. That's not what the ordinance is doing at all. It is merely allowing people to be able to use the facilities that are comfortable for them to use.
Match their gender presentation. That match their gender presentation. And as a matter of fact, that was one of the things that really upset the trans community in terms of hearing our own people and ministers that we had much respect for prior to this hearing, and literally recite talking points from white conservative activists who have not had this community's best interests at heart, and to see them openly working with, with people like the Dave Welches and the Dave Wilsons of the world, who have been long-time anti-gay activists, was disheartening. It was also disheartening to see one of our African American city council members vote against the human rights of the entire community.
Can you name who that was?
Mr. Boykins.
I just want to say this. To me, watching this unfold, I was not in Houston when the testimony was given, but I was watching on the live stream. It was absolutely crazy to see Black people exploited, to see Black religion exploited, because that's exactly what it was. Even after Jerry Davis removed that language from the ordinance, it was still going around, and it had run rampant. And it was certain individuals that were keeping it up and spreading that there were going to be predators in the bathroom. Number one, that's a myth. And number two, it wasn't even a part of the ordinance anymore. And those individuals did not seek to change their narrative. In fact, they increased that narrative after it passed to get the signatures for the petitions, which they did incorrectly.
And even at the piggyback on what Tarah said, even at the Forward Times forum, after a longtime advocate at the Women and Children's specifically debunked that myth, this minister still got up 30 seconds later and repeated the myth.
But doesn't that contribute to what we were saying earlier, how there is this huge disconnect, though, between the GLBT community of color and the Black community of color? Obviously, we are saying that, oh, this is crazy that our own community was fighting against us. What can be done? And I'm sorry, I'm sure that was a question that was about to come up.
From me, yeah.
What can be done to help bridge that divide? I know one of the things that we as Delta Phi Upsilon have done, we create these safe spaces for gay men of color. So not only so you can be empowered yourself and speak openly about, the issues that we're having as people of color who are gay, but also address issues within our own Black community while trying to attach ourselves to the mainstream gay community. And there's a divide there too. Yeah. So we're pretty much acting as bridges, but there are other solutions on the table I'm sure that we can try to discuss.
I think one thing that we really need to do as Black SGL and trans folks and bi and trans folks,
Monica,
in
real
Houston.
quick, can you I've heard you say SGL. Can you say what SGL stands for?
SGL is a term called same gender loving. Okay, it's pretty much it was a an African American created term. To basically say, say lesbian gay, for lesbian gay. But,
good to know.
But one of the points that I think the problems that we've had here in the Houston, community is we really haven't been, as out and vocal and into, supporting some of the issues of the African American community as a whole. We haven't really done a good enough job on that. I know, when the last time I was here, I talked to one of the opponents, and she asked me the question when we had a discussion out in the parking lot. Well, where was the African American, LGBT community when we were trying to get our schools, keep our HISD schools closed? And little did she know that I was at that March meeting, actually speaking in opposition to it. There are other African American, LGBT folks who are members of the NAACP or who are members of the Urban League and other organizations who are, in the, in the party apparatus and doing things in the community, but sometimes they're doing it and not, openly, not in the open. So people don't know the good work these folks are doing. Yet here's this nice brother over here, or here's this nice sister over here, and they don't know that this sister may be a trans woman who one of our sisters is Dee Dee Waters does a toy drive every Christmas. or say, or that young African American gay person who volunteers their time at various organizations.
So from what I'm hearing, like, and this is from my experience as well, oftentimes when we get involved in the Black community, we don't do it as a gay person. We do it as just a member of the community. So from my understanding, it sounds like we need to be more open about our sexual orientation when we're getting involved, which is what we don't do as a community. We don't talk about our orientation. We don't talk about being gay within our family.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of both, one, everyone being more open, but also being more accepting.
Yeah.
And realizing that everyone is in this community. Everyone has stake in this community. So especially with respect to what's going on in Ferguson right now,
Yes.
I, as a Black and gay man, feel all of that equally.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're all doing our parts collectively, both everyone in this room, but also everyone else who's out there watching. When we are participating in our communities, we are bringing fully who we are. But as members of the SGL and community, we can be more out. But also, it needs to be a two-way street of there needs to be a comfortability that we can be as out without having any fear of retribution. But also, to another extent, I think that we need to understand that even though you may not understand SGL and gay people and it may conflict with your religion, there doesn't have to be that conflict. You can still maintain your religious understanding, but you can still allow someone to be who they are and respect that they should have the right to be who they are, but also try to get to know them. You know, because many people know gay people. They just didn't realize that they were until some issue or some reason will eventually lead them to that understanding, and then that changes their mind about who they are and who we are collectively.
Nice.
And just to piggyback on that,
1 second, we got a call and we'll come right back in. Caller, can I get your question or your comment?
Many of you know who I already know who I am. I'm a community activist. And I just wanted to say that one of the reasons that, give me a second, I got feedback. One of the reasons why we can't bridge the gap that we have between the heterosexual community and the LGBT SGL community is because everything needs to be unlearned that was learned. Every myth has to be debunked. And until we can find a way to debunk any myth that we may have, we won't be able to achieve any cohesion within the African American community, I should say.
Well, thank you for calling. I was like, thank you.
And I guess I don't know, caller, if you're still there. What are some of these myths? A couple of them, if you can think off the top of your head, that need to be debunked.
Okay. Well, first of all, one myth. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. One myth that we have to deal with is dealing with the trans community. I'm sorry. There's an invisibility there. And someone said it earlier about genitalia checks. Who has time to go into the restroom to look at someone on the surface and say, oh, you look like you could possibly be a man. Or you sound like you could possibly be a man. Who's going to go into a stall and say, hey, can I possibly look at your private parts? And that's one of the things we need to look at. And when you think about this, we have to think that there are more than just transgender women. There are also transgender men.
Yes.
Correct.
And we need more of our transgender men to stand up and to show, well, if I was born as a woman and now I present as a man, what bathroom should I use? And that's one of the myths we need to break right up front. And as far as the LGBT community is concerned, we need to not let our religious beliefs dictate how we treat each other. That's another myth. Because we're so ingrained in the church, we're so ingrained in what we're taught growing up. So naturally, especially in the Black community, the LGBT community, lesbian and gay men actually have transphobia. And we also have homophobia towards other gays who are more effeminate than we are. So one of the things that actually needs to happen is to, fix the fractures in the LGBT community first before we have to worry about going to the heterosexual community, because they're going to look at us and say, okay, well, you're transphobic yourself. You're femophobia. You have a femophobia. You have all of these phobias that you're dealing with. Why would we want to listen to you?
So it sounds like you're saying we start within and then move outward.
Right. You always have to work on the inside first before you can tell somebody else about their issues.
Quick question. Did you see a division within the gay community of color while we were fighting for Hero, or while we're continuously fighting for Hero?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain it?
I saw the division. I saw the division on the petitions when we were voluntarily checking the petitions. Some actually signed a petition to repeal the ordinance. When we actually were in the middle of debating in city council, there were people who openly expressed during the city council chambers that were JLBT, saying that they were against this ordinance, and it was because of transphobia, and it was also because the term of civil rights that for some reason seems to be taboo all of a sudden, just like the word color is. That in the LGBT community, especially among Black or African Americans, is the issue.
So you found it hard to mobilize the Black community of color, the Black gay community of color, to help fight for Hero?
Yes, I did. It was very disheartening to see maybe 20, 25 Black people in a room of 300 people, and I mean 20 to 25 people in support of the ordinance at the multiple hearings that we had over that course of 2 months. And then you turn around, most of the opposition was Black or Hispanic. And it's really disheartening to see people of color in general, not just African American, to be against something that is very well going to protect them.
So, and this is my last question, I promise. Do you think that a part of the hesitation of Black gay, same-gender loving people of color helping to fight for Hero was because they were hesitant to join what was considered a white gay movement?
Okay, now that's an onion question that has many layers.
Exactly.
I know. We had 15 minutes to do it.
Let's keep it simple. The first thing, yes, if the Houston community, the Houston Black gay community, has an anti-HRC subtext behind it,
Yes.
the Human Rights Campaign, because when they think of the white community, they think of HRC because it's so prominent, and every time they ask the Black community to come out, it's because when they need you, not when they want you to be there. It's not that they want you to be around. They only want to use you at certain situations, like when they have a gala. Hey, come and dress up like a penguin and serve us. Come volunteer, not come be a part of our organization. And then on top of that, I'm sorry, but it's the truth.
It is.
But the other part of the onion layer that really needs to be there is that a lot of the LGBT community that are Black, unfortunately, they're not necessarily DL, but they're living in heterosexual privilege. And that's one of the other reasons why they're not stepping forward.
Interesting, okay.
And you know, yeah, so it's all about heteronormativity, and if they have to sacrifice the heteronormativity for something that's going to protect them from losing their job, they're scared they're going to lose their job for testifying for something that will protect them from losing their job. So it's a big oxymoron.
We had that problem in the trans.
Well, I thank you for calling in. Yeah. You had some comments that we're about to touch on right now, so you're kind of led us into that. So thanks for your call.
Yeah, because we had that.
Thank you.
Because we had a lot of that problem in the trans community here. I say because it's so hard for us to get a job. When I was asking for people to, help to testify during the Hero hearings, many of these folks were scared. When I say justifiably scared, especially when these hearings are televised. And they are basically living non-disclosed lives. And the minute that you stand up there at that podium to testify on behalf of a hearing, your secret's out in this area.
But once again, I think that goes back to another central issue of the divide between the Black community and the Black GLBT or SGL community is in the fact that if you do out yourself, do you lose that status and do you lose that access to that community? And I think that does impact people's ability to speak on issues such as Hero, to be involved in GLBT-centered causes and things of that nature. And so in unpacking a lot of what was just said, it does start simultaneously. I do believe that we can solve some of the issues that are going on within our community, but also working to solve some of the issues going on in the larger community. Because within the GLBT community, we do have transphobia, we do have effemophobia, we do have a lot of other issues within our own group, but also we do have issues within the Black community, such as black checking each other. Because if you talk white, if you have an educational background, if you have this, that, and the other, and it further separates each other. But what we need to do is look and see, what do we all collectively have in common, and how can we come together based off of those things that we have in common to really affect change. Because we can affect change that will impact the Black community and actually help the Black community. Consequently, the Black community can do things that will help the GLBT community. But it's a matter of, we need to bridge those gaps.
Yeah, and there's situations where, in terms of the the trans masculine and trans feminine communities can also help. Trans women face horrific levels of violence. That's an issue that we share with our cis sisters. That we want to stop violence against women. We are very, interested in what the heck is going on with reproductive justice rights and stuff here. I have a serious problem with the fact that if you live west of I-35, you can no longer find a clinic. And some of those laws that they were using to try to deny women contraception are actually can actually be turned on trans women, in terms of impeding our access to hormone replacement therapy. So yes, there are a lot of issues in common that we can if we spent more time working together. And yes, and we can multitask on this. It's not we do this, do A, and then move on to B, and then C and D. We can multitask on this like we've always done. As a people.
How do we start?
We start by speaking out. We start by actually coming to the table, having these type of discussions, and not being scared of those frightful statements that the last caller might have just said. I think that's the beginning step. We start by showing up. It's scary. It was scary for me when I spoke in front of City Council in front of my former bosses at City Hall, talking about my HIV status, talking about being a Black gay male. It was a very intimidating experience, but at the same time, we were only people there of color speaking in favor of Hero. And I'm sure there are tons of other same gender loving people of color out there who could have been right there with us, and we could have all been fighting together.
And what about, go ahead.
We also start by seeing what do we have in common and coming together to work on those things that we have in common. Realizing that civil rights, human rights, equal rights are equal.
And I guess to piggyback off that, you said civil rights. I know the last time we talked, and Monica in the parking lot, civil rights was a huge issue. Is Hero or are parts of the fight of the LGBT community considered civil rights in the Black community?
And anyone?
Absolutely. And the reason why is because of this. Back when we had the civil rights movement, this is African Americans being denied rights because of their race, being inherently denied access to rights because they were Black. The same thing is going on for GLBT people. We are being denied access to our rights because of inherently who we are. So the reason for why they are similar is because it is being denied rights because of something you cannot change, for something that is inherently who you are, and not having the ability to live your life freely and have to live in fear that being who you are is going to result in you being discriminated against, in losing your job, losing access to your life to right.
Or even
for life. So to me, that's the reason for why this is a very equal issue. And for someone who is a part of both communities, I should have the ability to be able to say that this is a civil rights issue because I am connected to that history. That is my history. Bayard Rustin is my honorary brother. James Baldwin is a brother. All these people who are involved in these movements are brothers and sisters that I feel connected to, and therefore I should be able to say that all of my rights struggle is a civil rights and not separated based off of identifiers. So for that reason, we need to look at that. And also, we can all collectively do this because we don't want to discriminate against each other, and we don't want each other to feel discriminated against in this world.
You going to say something, Michael?
Well, I would say all forms of fighting for your equal status is a form of civil rights. I don't think any community should have ownership of what is considered civil rights. There's been communities all across the world has used the Black civil rights movement as an example of how they can fight for their own civil rights. And then we have to fight for our own civil rights within our own Black community. And I think we should have the right to use that terminology for it. The fact that Delta was founded was a form or an act of civil rights because we were not allowed in heterosexual Black fraternities. And so we had to create a fraternity for gay men of color. That's an act of civil rights, and that should be respected by our own community.
What about you, Tarah?
Ooh. I am fired up about this question. So civil rights does not belong to just the Black community, and that's just it. We don't own civil rights. We participated in a movement of civil rights, but there are many aspects of civil rights. There are civil rights for immigrants. There are civil rights for LGBT. We do not own that word or that phrase. However, I understand the reason why the mainstream Black community gets upset about it. Is gay rights and racial rights the same? No, but they intertwine. So it doesn't matter, especially when it comes to those who are very religious. We're all children of God. It does not matter what sin you committed. Each person was made divinely by God, and everyone should be treated with respect and dignity and equality. And there's no other discussion. This is very, very simple, especially for people who are religious. At the basis of Christianity is love one another. You know, and I don't understand how we can use the teaching of the Bibles to hate each other. That it hasn't made sense racially when we were using the Bible for slavery. It hasn't made sense when we were using it to contest biracial marriage, and it doesn't make sense in any aspect of the LGBT community either. So it boggles my mind. It really, really, really does, because as a Christian, I cannot stand by and watch not only somebody of my own community be discriminated against, even if it's something I don't agree with. I can't sit by and let another human being be discriminated against and not do anything about it, whether it's something I care about or not. If it's a murderer and he hasn't had a fair trial, it's wrong. It doesn't matter what it is.
Monica, get that last 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, and to piggyback on Sister Tarah's comments, trans folks are part of the divine creation. So to deny my humanity, that's a problem. I say, you're also denying my Blackness when you try to deny me being who I am and who trans people are. All we are African Americans just like you who want to work, pay our taxes, live our lives, love people who we want to love, and vote, and vote in the upcoming November 4th election.
I like that. That's a good way to end this. And on that note, we just want to say thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your calls. Again, I'm Fran Watson.
I'm Darrell Douglas.
And we'll see you at the next Hero discussion. Thank you, panelists. Thank you.